My daddy says I ain't his child. Ain't that something now? Ain't that wild? Daddy says I ain't his child. Ain't that something wild? Hey, anybody I might have missed, would you care to state that I exist? I ain't quite sure what it is I did to make him swear that I ain't his kid. But he told Mama and she told me back when I was just about 3. She held my face and she kind of smiled. She said, he says you ain't his child. Ooh, hoo, hoo. Oh, hoo, hoo. Oh, hoo, 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 hoo. Boop, ba-doo-doo. My daddy says I ain't his child. Ain't that something now? Ain't that wild? Daddy says I ain't his child. Ain't that something wild? Ain't that something wild? Ain't that something wild? Thank you. I get it. Okay, certainly questions.
So, John, if we're out downtown Chico and we meet the man on the street and he says, I heard that there's no real fossils or anything, and so there's just no reason to believe in evolution, but we've heard this lecture. What's the simplest way to convey something like this about the DNA and so forth?
Well, if you go to the right place, fossils really aren't that hard to find. I collected fossils, and I'm a real hack at it. Sequencing DNA is maybe a little bit more problematic, but I think that one of the things that we probably have all we all have encountered is that some people ask for evidence, but it won't matter what you tell them anyway. They're just going to be resistant to that. So I'm not so sure that I'm that worried about convincing people that are that far out of touch with, the reality of nature. They have particular reasons for choosing that worldview, and in spite of protestations, I don't think that they're really interested in looking objectively at evidence. I think that that's a curious thing about evolution too, is I could have really given an amazing talk tonight if I had changed my title to New Evidence Against Evolution. Really? Can you imagine new evidence against evolution? First of all, it would have had a very different crowd, and probably bigger crowd. But second, no, I mean, in terms of the people who would really want to hear about the evidence against evolution. And it's true that there is the possibility of evidence against evolution everywhere we look. If we were to do some sequencing and we found a living organism that had a different code, we could only come to the conclusion that life must have originated more than once, or that maybe evolution is wrong. If we were to, as Haldane, who is a famous population geneticist, said, that if we were to find a fossil rabbit back 300 million years ago in the Cambrian period, then that would instantly falsify evolution. There would be no way to explain that. So it's not that it's this, quote, theory that we choose to believe because we're just like to be people who are hard to get along with. Rather, it's the mountain of evidence. And again, I'd give anything to see Darwin spend a week looking at the new evidence. I think that it would be enough to make him feel better. His lifelong torment, whatever sort of condition he had, I think we could have cured him with all of the amazing evidence that goes for it. And what's the evidence against evolution? The scientific evidence. I haven't heard it yet, but I love it when the whole apple cart turns over and when paradigms flip. So if it were out there, I would be the first one who would want to hear it. And if it were something that I could independently test or verify, I'd get my butt in the lab and I would say, is there any truth to this? And if there was, it would be very exciting from the standpoint that we have to totally rethink the game. And what's wrong with that? So I don't know. On the one hand, we can try to convince people, but on the other hand, I think we have to realize their limitations.
You're talking about finding a different set of DNA, and I'm wondering if you're talking at the bacterial level, like say archaeobacteria, or if you're talking at the complex level. Because in my opinion, if we find archaeobacteria that aren't very closely related to something like archaeobacteria that aren't very closely related to anything, different base pairs or something, that wouldn't be a big deal. But finding, say, like a mammal that has different base pairs, that could be a real problem.
I could get pretty excited about bacteria, though. And so, to find archaea that had a novel code.
I mean, it's evidence against evolution.
I wouldn't say even that is evidence against the rest of life evolving in a particular way. What that might be evidence against is that life began once, and what we really come from is a single trunk of the tree. And what we might still find is that there are other instances of organisms that have evolved, and they have sort of separate rules, perhaps. But we've looked quite a bit, and the cataloging by biologists is pretty remarkable. And we've not seen anything of that nature so far. I mean, again, this is one of the fun things about the exoplanets, right? To go someplace and find life. And I have to admit that I chuckled when I read the astronomer from Santa Cruz, who was one of the co-discoverers of this planet. He said, undoubtedly there is life on that planet. And I thought, oh, I wish you hadn't said that. And then I also was really amazed when they showed a picture of the planet. They had a picture of it. And I thought, holy crap, how'd they do that? And then I read the article, and it said they knew the planet was there because the sun does this little sort of wiggle from the gravitational pull. And then I figured the picture was not really that planet. So at any rate, I think we need to be careful as scientists in terms of how we, sell what we actually know to the public. Maybe I'm a little naive in that area, but at any rate. Other questions? Yes.
Occasionally you hear that people say that the missing link has never been found.
I love missing link. I just love it.
So it probably has been found, right?
Well,
Which one?
yeah, you see, that's the beautiful thing about missing link is that everything is a missing link. Do you all have mothers? Does your mother have a mother? And that mother, grandmother has a mother? So how would it be possible that there's some broken link, that somehow life just jumped on the planet fully formed and said, whoa, where did I come from? Richard Dawkins did an interesting calculation. He said, if we share a common ancestor with chimps 5 million years ago, then what you do is you take a modern day human woman and a modern day human chimp, female chimp, and you have them stand next to each other. The woman would hold hands with her mother, and her mother would hold hands with her mother. And what they would do is from daughter to mother, they would hold hands until the distance in time would span back 5 million years of generations. And at that point, what you would have is you would have the chimps and the humans holding hands 5 million years ago. Do you know how long the line of organisms would be to get back that 5 million years? It's only 200 miles. That's it. So imagine people lined up for 200 miles representing generations going back, and there we have it. So where is the missing link, I ask you? What people are really asking is, shouldn't we be able to find a fossil for every animal that's ever existed? And the answer to that is, well, I would hope not. Because we would be crawling through bones if every animal was deposited on the earth and just stayed this way. I mean, the place would be a graveyard. So, I mean, that's not something anyone would wish for. And indeed, it's pretty rare to die and be under the conditions that would lead to fossilization, right? And with the exception of maybe some university professors, there aren't many fossils anymore. Any other?
Yes. I know that evolution essentially is, I mean, it's not doubted by any
Thinking person.
Thinking person, or especially within the scientific community. But I was curious if there's anything that's been developed recently in terms of sort of discovering the origins of life. You know, whether we're talking about allogenesis, never pronounced that word, allogenesis, or where else it might be. Like, so we got evolution, we know that's true, but how did we get from, you know, that one cell? Where did that one cell come from that started the whole thing, or whatever it might be, that one piece of bacteria?
And really, to talk about abiogenesis, you have to go even quite a bit further back from that original cell, because it seems that what we're really talking about here, and I think Dawkins does a good job of talking about this in his book, The Selfish Gene, is we're talking about an interesting property that sometimes occurs, and that property is replication. And the ability for something to become a replicator, and starting off even under these conditions where the replication is a molecule that somehow has the ability now to catalyze a reaction to form a molecule that looks like itself. That it shouldn't be necessarily limited in terms of thinking about replicators to life, you know, to DNA. We probably don't come from DNA, by the way. Anyway, the original code of life probably was RNA for certain reasons, and we still have viruses that live off of the RNA code. So, you know, that's nothing that's too hard to swallow. But I think there could be some real interesting advances in chemistry and in the sorts of things that we learn about basic replication of molecules. You know, think of the self-assembly of molecules. And I think that it's not, you know, too much science fiction to say that we might be able to find other self-replicating chemical systems. I think it's possible. Yes?
Is it time for us as teachers to get away from defining life as being the membrane-bound things and going into the viral groups? I always feel like it's kind of a puzzle that we throw at the students and
Right.
quite
Right. It's, you know, it's similarly problematic to ask what a species is. And I mean, we can have sort of neat, simple definitions of species, but in actuality, it's a fairly complex problem, especially getting back to you know, what you're saying about bacteria and the fact that you know, archaea are very different sorts of organisms, and you have this horizontal gene transfer among bacteria that, well, I mean, people transfer genes too, but it's a different sort of thing in terms of how you would define that. So I like to think of viruses as things that meet a lot of the criteria of being alive. Sure, they require cells, but, you know, I require restaurants for my survival, so, you know, what's the diff? Anything else? As I said at the onset, I'd be more than happy if you find a particular part of this area interesting. I have access to some resources that, you know, that sort of run the gamut of things that I might use in a general education class, up to things that maybe would be more appropriate for bio majors and stuff. I'd be happy to share any of that with you through I guess we could do it through the Facebook page, right? Yeah. Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, thank you very much. Appreciate it.